Hampton landlord and landscaper is slapped with 17 years in prison for charges of fraud, identity theft, and race-based interference with housing and employment. 59-year-old David Merriman owns more than 60 rental properties in Newport News and Hampton. Many of them, the feds say, were in poor condition. Merriman had also been charged with scheming to get rent relief benefits he wasn't entitled to. Prosecutors say he also mocked tenants with slurs and death threats.
At 5, a Peninsula landlord who racially harassed and evicted tenants and defrauded COVID relief programs was sentenced to 17 years in prison today. David Merriman owned dozens of rental properties in Newport News and Hampton. In an exclusive sit-down with 13 News Now, federal investigators reflect on why this case is unlike any they've seen in their career. Here's Alex Littlehills.
Unique facet of this investigation from a hate crimes perspective. Number of people who were abused by Dave Merriman. Cruelty they had to endure.
A landlord of last resort, so he could take advantage of these individuals.
I've been a federal prosecutor for 15 years. I have never seen a case like this. These civil rights violations against, everyday people in Hampton Roads.
14 years ago, I was looking for another house to live in because I was in a slum house that was infested by termites.
When Uganda Sample Jones needed a new place to call home.
And Dave had a house around the corner from where we were.
She didn't look far. She found David Merriman, a landlord who owns properties across Newport News and Hampton. But she couldn't expect choosing to live in a Merriman property would be a regret she holds on to still.
He is someone who is manipulative. He likes to get over on people.
Where most landlords repair their properties when needed, Merriman often wouldn't.
We had a ceiling leak from our top floor to our bottom floor. He left it a gaping hole in our roof, in our ceiling for about a few months.
In many cases, these properties were condemned. In many cases, they didn't have the things anybody would expect to have in a house. Appliances, furnaces, air conditioning.
According to a 58-page federal indictment against Merriman, he repeatedly refused repairing his properties, leaving them with faulty air conditioning, plumbing problems, sewage inside the homes where people lived. One renter even fell through the floor of his house filled with rodents because it rotted away. The details still stand out for Ted Rose, a former special agent with the FBI Norfolk Field Office, who investigated the case.
One stands out to me in particular. This woman had to walk her children down the street to use the toilet because the house she was renting from Dave Merriman did not have a functioning toilet in it. Rodents and insects crawling across the floor.
Piggyback on what Ted said as far as his business practices, he focused on vulnerable victims. It was minority females, single minority females with children.
Federal HUD investigator Robert Pladek adds that Merriman's targeted tenants were often those who are most vulnerable.
They really had no other choices. It was either move into a Merriman property or be homeless, essentially.
This is the first case where we have had criminal charges brought against a landlord for knowingly not keeping the property up to safe and sanitary conditions. They have to certify that the programs are held to a certain standard, and the facts here are so egregious.
But the federal investigation into David Merriman isn't only about what he did, but how he did it.
I think the uniqueness of this case, though, is the civil rights component of that.
Racist harassment.
Derogatory names, like, do you want me to say them?
That was Alex Littlehills reporting. Part 2 of his exclusive sit-down with the FBI airs tomorrow.